This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. On this show, we are all about making connections. Sometimes guests on the show have different views on an important topic, but find a point of commonality during Vermont Edition. That happens a lot with listeners, too. And sometimes our guest is even your neighbor or your daughter, and you can call in and say hi. That happened just yesterday, and I really loved it. For me, these moments of real connection are the true heart of Vermont Edition. But recreating that kind of magic in person with people you meet for real out in the world can still be hard and kind of scary. When I moved to Vermont for college, for example, I had absolutely no idea, turns out, how to make friends, and dating was even worse. It took, honestly, like more than a year to figure out my social life and make some real connections. This hour, we're going to be talking about how people in their late teens and 20s and 30s in our region are figuring out how to build those real life social connections in this digital age. Later, we're going to hear about how a woman in Rutland is helping women in their 20s and 30s make friends. But first, if you have dated in the last 2 decades, you've probably used a dating app. First, there was Match and OkCupid, and then the scene completely exploded to Tinder and Grindr and Bumble, and the list just goes on and on. I did just call it Bubble, which is very embarrassing. But let's move on. So even on college campuses, these dating apps are everywhere these days. But the question that our Vermont Edition team had is, are these apps really helping students find connection? Here to tell us more is Kate Mays. She's an assistant professor from the University of Vermont. She's a social scientist, and she studies how emergent technologies affects our civil, social, and interpersonal lives. Kate, welcome to Vermont Edition.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and listeners, we would love to have you as well. This is a safe space for you to share your most embarrassing dating story from college or your early 20s. We know you have one. Maybe you never saw the person again, or against all odds, you kept dating or even got married after this crazy first date. Tell us more. Call in at 800-639-2211 or email Vermont Edition at vermontpublic.org. Kate, before we get into your actual research, can we talk for a minute about what college dating was like for you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I did not have a lot of direct firsthand experience with college dating because I was a rather late bloomer and didn't do much dating in college. But yes, it was very much, I mean, I think the dating websites like OkCupid maybe were around, but not prevalent in the college scene. And it was just, you go to parties, you meet people, or
Right.
I worked on a college newspaper, and I have at least 6 people I know who got married, 8, 10. A lot of people got married
Dang.
from the college. They met on the college newspaper and then got married. So yes, it was all sort of, who are you coming into contact with in class, with your extracurriculars and your interests, or maybe serendipitously at a party, someone you wouldn't have run into otherwise.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but for me, when I was in college, going on an actual date, like a first date or
Yeah,
something, was
didn't happen.
incredibly rare. I
Yes.
think I was thinking before the show, and I think I went on one real date in college. It was to the now tragically closed Tully and Marie's in Middlebury, which did 2-for-1 pad thai, I think on like Monday nights or something.
Mm-hmm.
That relationship did not work out, but I treasure it because it was my one real date that I
Right.
went on.
Yeah. I mean, why go out on a date and spend all that money when you can just meet up at parties and have fun around your
Right.
friends? I don't know. Yeah, it was sort of, it was notable if someone was going out on a date that indicated a real seriousness and kind of intentionality and purposiveness that maybe was absent from a lot of college dating.
Yes. Well, I didn't bring you here just to reminisce about bad dating memories from college. You are actually doing a lot of research right now on AI and the public's perception of it. And you're teaching classes at UVM, interacting with a lot of college students. How do you see all these kind of seemingly disparate threads coming together when these conversations about AI, society's perceptions of it, and dating life?
Yeah, I think there's a real concern and a lot of discourse around AI about a kind of winnowing out of the humanity and how we interact and connect as humans. And that's actually a relatively old discourse. I remember with online dating that was also a concern, that it was dehumanizing. It was, treating people like trading cards or what have you. But I think for particularly this generation of college students, they're a digital first generation. They grew up with a lot of computer mediated communication. That's how a lot of them communicate with each other all the time. It's a regular part of their lives, like via text and then on social media and all this stuff. It's just sort of integral into their daily ways of being. And so I think it makes sense that turning to dating apps feels like a natural thing for them.
Yeah. And there's also this feeling that dating apps can, like any type of social media, collapse the distance between people. We're in a rural part of the country. Do you think that there is a unique role or need for dating apps in a place like Vermont?
Yeah, you would think that, right? Because dating apps do like mitigate that distance. It mitigates that challenge of like, well, there's only 5 people in my hometown who are eligible, but maybe there's a wider pool that I can access via dating apps. Interestingly, actually, rural people are less likely to be on dating apps. It's more urban environments where there's a higher proportion of people using dating apps and fewer people. A smaller proportion in rural communities. And I think that may have something to do with the fact that, like, if you're in a city, like I use dating apps in a city, you never reach the end of that pool. Like, you can just keep infinite swiping, all the possibilities and choice, which is its own challenge. But in rural communities, like, you can reach the end where Tinder or Match or Hinge says, we're out of people. That's it. You've reached the end of the road.
Have you tried Montreal?
Right. Like maybe go 90 minutes to to figure, or like go, maybe you'll get lucky and there'll be some tourists in Burlington that'll show up in your feed occasionally. And so that could be its own, kind of reinforcement of a deflating reality that people in rural communities feel, which is that the pool is smaller. And there's not as many high quality candidates for dating.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I am thinking about when we talk about dating and dating apps is just how different it feels from my own college experience, which I would like to think is not that long ago. But it's such a different way of presenting yourself and putting yourself out there. And now we also have the ability to use AI to create a dating profile. And so you're using kind of 2 different levels of technology to mediate who you are to the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, dating apps present a nice opportunity to present sort of the best version of your actual self. I think that's sort of the optimal way to be using a dating profile, is to say, here's like sort of the version of myself I would like to present that is also realistic. Like I'm not making things up. If you see me in person, there is a version of this person that I can be. I think AI, the issue, catfishing was a concern back with anonymity online, and people could just make up who they are and present pictures that aren't accurate. And then in dating profiles, right, there's a lot of discussion around
is catfishing like old-fashioned now?
I think it's relevant. We may be seeing a new phase of catfishing with like AI generated images, right? Or like people could make like avatars of themselves that with AI generated images that are maybe ideal versions of themselves, which is just a new iteration of maybe using an older, more flattering picture that isn't quite representative of who you are. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, all of those strategies or tactics to try to, bamboozle people into swiping right on you aren't really, if you're not being truthful to who you are, who your authentic self is, it's not going to get you very far ultimately, right? Because eventually you're going to meet that person in person and they're going to see who you are. And if you present an entirely different self on your app, it's not going to go very far, right?
And especially in a rural place like Vermont, where you are very likely to run into the people that you see on apps.
Yes.
More so than in an urban setting.
Yes. I have a friend who who was dating in Burlington, and she was like, "This is really tough. I run into these people all the time, and it's really, it's a smaller pool, and yeah, that presents its own kind of challenges where you have to think more about what your behavior is like with that person because it could have knock-on effects
Yeah.
later. Like they might know another person that you end up dating, and if you behave poorly, that might get around.
Right.
Yeah.
So the way that we date and flirt when we're young really sets the stage for future more mature relationships. And I wonder how you think dating apps are influencing people who are in their late teens, early 20s, might be in college. Um, how is that influencing kind of a broader, larger way that their personality is developing?
Yeah, I think there's two ways to think about this, or like there's a positive lens and a negative lens.
Hmm.
Which one do you want me to start with?
Let's start positive.
Let's start positive. So I think from the positive lens, like a dating app, particularly for like a digital native that's really accustomed to this kind of communication, a dating app is a much lower barrier to entry in terms of dipping your toe into trying out this maybe newish form of interacting with another person in terms of being flirty and a little more kind of putting forward a side of yourself that you maybe don't do as much with friends or classmates or your professor, hopefully. And so that can be really liberating for people, particularly if they're shy, if they're introverted.
Yeah, I think
have
when I was in
anxiety.
college, if
Yeah.
I would try to go to a party, try to meet people, and if I didn't know anybody, I would just leave and go home.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why I said I didn't really date in college. I was a shy, anxious person.
I think we would have been friends.
Yeah,
I'm
probably.
sensing.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, all of my dating and relationships started with a website and then later the apps. So for me personally, they really worked well, and particularly after like a breakup, dipping my toe back into the apps, it was kind of like a sandbox where I could play around and try things out in a very low stakes kind of way. The negative lens is that, there's a lot of personal growth that can happen in experiencing that kind of friction and discomfort with another person.
Standing at a party alone, not knowing anybody.
Standing at a party. I mean, and this is true. I mean, and this is what you see, what I'm hearing with young people, like they have their phones as a crutch, right? So standing alone at a party, you don't even have to actually experience necessarily that extreme discomfort of aloneness that might compel you to go talk to someone because you can pull out your phone. And indeed, I've heard that younger people are using Replica, the AI chatbot, to pretend like they're talking to someone when they're alone and on their phone around. I mean, and I guess they are kind of talking to someone, but it's a chatbot, in order to not feel lonely and in order to not feel that kind of like they're different from their peers who are around them also on their phones. And maybe they're all on their phones talking to Replica alone together, as Sherry Turkle would say, which is kind of depressing. But yes, I think in those younger years, it can really help to form, ideas about like what do you want, who you are when you face those kinds of challenges in putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, right? Like we have to do that in other parts of our lives. We have to go do job interviews that are really scary where you're vulnerable and putting yourself out there. So in this way, it's helpful to be practicing and honing that skill in college when it's kind of a safer space to be trying that out.
Right. So how can a young person tell if a dating app is actually serving them?
Yeah, I think it's a great tool to have in one's toolbox. I think it's a yes and sort of thing. Be open to meeting people in person and at clubs, like in your club activities, in the classroom, and also maybe be on the apps sometimes if that doesn't seem to be working in the in-person thing. And I think that people really need to just be trusting their gut and how they feel, right? If the apps are starting to make them feel either like they're addicted to them, like they go to them if they're feeling like low self-esteem or they need validation, I mean, that can be a positive benefit, right? To kind of give yourself a little boost. But if you're relying too much on the apps to get that feeling of self-validation, that might mean that you're a little too reliant on the app and to pull back a bit.
Yeah. And I feel like our society has gotten so much better at talking about how addicted we are to social media sites like Instagram and TikTok. I don't know if we've gotten better at actually cutting ourselves
Modulating,
off a
yeah.
little bit, but we talk about it a lot. People
hmm
are aware. Do you think that we should think of dating apps as being in that same category of social media that is connecting us, but also maybe starting to cause some fraying in society?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, like social media, dating apps, like you are in a digital space expressing yourself in some way. On a dating app, you may be more explicitly self-presenting yourself, whereas on a social media app, you may be, kind of tailoring your self-presentation to a different audience. But yes, fundamentally, like we are communicating interpersonally with people on social media and on dating apps, and that can be valuable. But also sometimes, like if the signals that you're getting back are making people feel badly, then there's no harm in attenuating the use a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kate, I can imagine it's fun to have these conversations with students in classrooms because your research focuses on something that directly affects their lives that they're kind of living through right now. What are your in-person conversations on campus like?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because what I've heard from students is that they really desire analog. They don't want this like saturation of digital media in the way that they, I don't know, feel compelled or like that's what their peers are doing. And so that's what they have to do. In my social media class that I teach, this past semester, I introduced a digital detox assignment. And I did not force them to completely cut off their social media and smartphone use. I let them pick their rules for themselves. And I was nervous about presenting this assignment to them because I assumed they would all be like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to not use my media. But actually, a lot of them were very excited about the assignment because it's like they liked the opportunity to try to be forced to give up or at least modify or reduce their use. And I guess it was helpful to have that external
Like we're all
force of
looking
an
for someone to
assignment.
just be like, stop it.
just telling them to do that. And I had them, write reflections afterwards. And there was some, really interesting introspection from them about how much they much more value that kind of in-person interaction with their peers. And if they're all just on their phones, it can be like it's sort of sad to think that everyone's on their phones while they're all secretly wishing they could put their phones away and be talking with each other.
Kate Mays, I love hearing about this research. I think it's so exciting, and I'm so glad that students today are getting this opportunity to talk about their real lives and struggles in a campus, in a collegiate setting. Kate is a UVM social scientist. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's fun.
All right, we need to take a short break, but don't go anywhere because when we come back, we are going to talk not about romantic connections, but platonic ones, and how a woman in Rutland is working to build friendships amongst other women in their 20s and 30s. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. This hour, we are talking about making connections and how people in their late teens, 20s, and 30s are making friendships in new ways as well as romantic relationships. I'm joined now by Kiana McClure, who is building community one girl hang at a time. This summer, she launched something called Hot Girl Social. She organizes cocktail hours and group exercise classes and other fun events for women in their 20s and 30s. Kiana is also a member of the Rutland City Board of Aldermen. Kiana, welcome to Vermont Edition.
Thank you so much for having me, Michaela. This is so exciting.
Oh, I'm so glad. So where did this idea come from? It's such a joyful one. When we heard about it in our newsroom, everyone was like, I'm so glad somebody's doing that.
Oh, thank you. Actually, funny enough, the idea kind of came from a handful of bar hangs this summer. I made a bunch of new friends who just relocated to Rutland. We have a ton of people relocating to southern Vermont to work in tech and work remotely. And I met this group of 5 fantastic women, and none of them knew each other yet. And they had all the same story. I moved here because I work remotely. My partner works remotely. I don't work. I go to yoga class, but everyone already kind of knows each other. I come out to the bar and everyone kind of knows each other, and I don't know what to do. And every single one of those people I met had the same closing line to their story. I was ready to move away until I met one or two people who made me want to be here and want to stay. And then the conversations kind of snowballed into, my God, it's so hard to be a young woman and be looking to make friends in Rutland. We have a lot of young professional networks. We have a lot of professional development, which is awesome. But that doesn't always translate into, do you want to go get a beer after this?
Yeah,
you know?
why do you think it is so hard?
I think a lot of it really comes from a kind of, in the specific context of women in their 20s and 30s and people in their 20s and 30s in the Rutland area as a whole, we're kind of sectioned off from a lot of the state. You know, UVM and Middlebury, they have these super, super rich communities of young people who are there for the university. We have Castleton University, or Vermont State University at Castleton now, and they are phenomenal. They have a great student body, but it's not kind of in the heart of our community, in the seat of the county. So once you graduate high school, or if you're coming back over the summer and your friends aren't still there, it's really hard to continue to kind of build and grow and meet those new people because it's not all concentrated. It's not all in one place.
Right. If you've been to a Hot Girl Social event or something else of this kind that's bringing people in their 20s and 30s together to make connections and specifically friendships, give us a call and tell us about your experience. 800-639-2211 is our number. You can also email vermontedition@vermontpublic.org. So Kiana, not to toot my own Vermont Public horn, but I do hear that there is a connection between this group and a Vermont Public sponsored event that you went to, Join or Die.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was so inspired. I got the chance to go to the Join or Die screening a few months ago, and I thought it was so cool.
And can you tell us about what the screening is, what the movie is?
Absolutely.
It's not a Vermont Public movie. We just put on the screening. But I do want to highlight it.
Of course. It was a phenomenal film that was on Netflix originally called Join or Die, and it was a great movie about the importance of social clubs and like their kind of formational background to the United States and United States culture and how it has declined over the last 50 or 60 years. And it was based on a really, really awesome book that I tried to get from the Rutland Free Library before today so I could give it a read, called Bowling Alone. And that book was all about how social clubs were in decline in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And this one person, I forget his last name because I called him Bob in the movie, but I know it was Robert something. He had this amazing book and he did this amazing study, and the title came from bowling leagues in the 60s were up, but the bowling amounts of people were up, but league participation was down almost 60% because so many people were bowling alone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and you're talking about the author, Robert Putnam.
Yes, Robert Putnam. They called him Bob in the movie, so I was like, I never caught his last name. So, but yeah, so I saw that screening in Rutland over the summer, and I was just so inspired. And being a part of so many professional development-based organizations, I was like, God, I'd love to see something cool like this for just a social sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then the whole bar hangs and meeting all those wonderful ladies, I was like, I can just do it. So that's where we are now.
Yeah. And there's a write-up about the group in the Rutland Herald, so hat tip to them for spreading the word. And in that, I read that speaking of jobs and career development groups, you do have one rule for this group, which is that you start conversations not by talking about your job, but something else.
Exactly. I try to start every Hot Girl Hang with something a little fun. So for the last few, we've started with what's your favorite hobby? Because those are the things that can really connect people on an interpersonal and social level. I work in tech. That's my day job. I work in marketing for a tech company, and I'm very grateful for the company I work for. They're amazing humans. But sometimes when I'm talking to somebody else who doesn't work in tech, they feel like there's a barrier. There's not really much to connect about. But then if I say, I love going to the craft cocktail bar in downtown Rutland and sampling all the new seasonal flavors, Other people are like, hey, I'm really into mixology. Hey, that sounds like a ton of fun. Let's go do that sometime. You know, people are way more inclined to talk about the things they have fun doing than the things that they get paid to do, unless they really love their job. And I am guilty for have talked about my job at a couple of hot girl hangs because I love my job. I love what I do.
And talk to me about the name Hot Girl Hangs, because it has nothing to do with how you actually look, right? It's more like a state of mind.
Absolutely. I like to say, and it's kind of our tagline, is hot girl isn't a look, it's a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's how you pull up to a situation. It's how you pull up to any sort of social interaction and how you may be engaging with other people. A hot girl is confident. She goes out of her way to try new things, to meet new people. She walks into a bar knowing that she's going to take a number home. It could be somebody that she wants to pursue something with later, or it could be a new best friend that she's excited to go to Pilates with on Tuesday. It's so amazing to see how it's kind of forming. And the hot girl hang, it doesn't seem that there's been a lot of pushback to the concept and to the name from women. From a couple of men, I've had, hey, what is this supposed to mean? And I'm like, you're projecting here. This is what we're actually talking about.
And I understand that you went to an all-women's college.
I did.
Too. Did that experience influence your interest in hosting these events for women specifically?
100%. 100%. I met some of the best people in my life in my undergraduate years. And I'm so grateful to have had the chance to go to an all-women's college and kind of have that formative 18, 19, 20, and then the pandemic hit. So the pandemic hit halfway through my junior year, so I moved home. And I really felt that difference from being in an incredibly feminine space to coming home. And anyone who knows me back home who's listening, you know that I have a lot of siblings, and a lot of them are brothers. So it's a
How many were you talking?
I'm the middle of 11.
Wow.
So yeah, blended family, but I'm the middle of 11.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot. There's a lot of us, and there's a lot of brothers involved, a lot of masculine energy. So coming from a space of what I like to call this concentrated divine feminine, in which everyone is so in tune with themselves and how they feel and their interactions with other people, it just felt a little, I don't want to say softer, but a little softer, not as rough around the edges of having to butt up against awkward situations where you're like, oh, that didn't feel good. But instead you're approaching these social situations with women with open arms. We're like, oh, come sit at our table. Do you want to join our club? This is what we're talking about. It's just so much different. And that's the energy I want to bring to this.
Yeah. We got an email just now from a listener named Ella in Burlington who says, I met my friends through a now defunct Facebook group that aimed to connect women in the Burlington area. It was a fun experience. I saw Hot Girl Social when they had less than 50 followers, and while I haven't attended an event, I look forward to participating. Yeah, your social media is blowing up, Kiana.
Thank you. Yeah, social media is kind of my day job. It's what I do for the company that I work for, but I also love Canva. So I just spend a lot of time hanging out at home like, this looks kind of pretty. And other people seem to like the aesthetic. So it's great.
And have you thought about expanding to other spaces outside of Rutland, other places outside of Rutland?
100%. We actually did try to kind of have a very early Burlington launch. We had partnered with a company called Naughty Paddle, and they do cycle boat tours. They were so cool. They're like, if you can get 20 girls up here, you can get a boat ride. I'm like, absolutely, let's go. The day that we were supposed to go, it was raining, and we couldn't go. So I sent out a message to everyone who had RSVP'd. We had a wait list that was 50 people long. And I was like, hey, anybody who RSVP'd, your spot is still held on the boat, but we're all going to go to Burlington Beer Company instead and hang out and do beers and fries and just hang out. 16 people came, which was insane. I'm still reeling at the way the numbers have grown at every event.
Yeah.
And we have some things in the works. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to announce them yet, but I strongly encourage my Chittenden County girlies to keep an eye on our Facebook, put us on your favorites, see when things come up, but also come down and visit us in Rutland. We've got a lot of really cool stuff going on down there and a lot of really cool events planned for the fall, and y'all should come and hang out with us.
Do you have any advice for somebody in your age group, somebody in their 20s or early 30s who maybe just moved here or moved back to Vermont after a time away and is really struggling to make new friends? Other than joining Hot Girl Social.
Other than joining Hot Girl Social, of course, because you should totally join Hot Girl
Yes.
Social. There's two prongs to it. One, I really recommend looking into young professionals networks in your county. That's how I made a lot of my current friends leading up to Hot Girl Social. I'm actually the events chair of Rutland Young Professionals, so shout out you guys, love you guys.
You are busy,
I
girl.
am busy. I am. I like to joke that my 24 hours is longer than everyone else's because I just keep going. But definitely a young professionals network. And it's hard to say because I know a lot of people don't like it. But Vermont is a Facebook state. I find a lot of like the cool things that we get to go and do from the events tab on Facebook. And that's really where I've found all of these cool niche festivals and movie screenings and book signings where I've gone and I've met other cool people who kind of inspired this project. Because it's what we've got, because no one really uses Partyful here from what I've noticed. They used it when I was in college, those little digital invites, but having a big group listing where you can see your friends and neighbors and other people engaging with it, it definitely helps.
And as you think about expanding, Kiana, I'm wondering if there are like specific types of businesses or ways in which you want to partner with local businesses that could help not only your group grow, but help small businesses here as well.
Absolutely. So the kind of model that we're looking for right now is to kind of pop up on restaurant nights or to gyms that might just need a little extra boost on a couple days. We had a partner event with a restaurant down in Rutland. They were like, hey, our Saturday lunch has been kind of slow. I'm like, all right, bet. And then I brought like 11, 12 people there on a Saturday, and it was great. We have another event being planned, and this one's in Montpelier, but I'm not allowed to say where it is yet because we're still ironing out. We're picking it's a busier night for them, but it's their slow hours in the beginning of the night to kind of help kickstart the evening. So we're really looking to partner with businesses that have identified slow days and they want to bring in people on those days.
And then lastly, Kiana, we've talked about these big events that you've been planning that you get to attend, but are in a lot of ways a public service. But I'm wondering if you might be able to tell us about a friend that you've made in the recent past. You don't have to share their name or anything, but tell us about a connection that you've made that has really kind of helped inspire this work.
I would have to say it's hard because there were 5 very specific women that I met in the month of June that inspired this. But if I'm looking back in the last even year, there's so many more because there's so many awesome, vibrant women I've met in Rutland County who are craving these connections and want to meet more people and hang out. I don't know if I could pin it down to one person, but I can really pin it down to a season, and that season is summer. Summer in Vermont is the best time, in my opinion. I don't ski. I know I need to learn how. Hot girl skiing is coming. I just need to make sure I'm not going to break myself first. But yeah, summer in Vermont is kind of the season of connection for Hot Girl Social, and it's really what's inspired this.
Yeah. Kiana McClure, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about Hot Girl Social.
Thank you for having me.
And before I let you go, I should say that we just got an email from your mom, and she says that you've made her very proud and that she loves you.
Oh, I love you, Mom. I love all of my parents, but I love you, Mom. Thank you for the email.
You can learn more about Hot Girl Social on their Instagram page at Hot Girl Social VT, or also on Facebook.
Or you can find us at hotgirlsocial.net.
Amazing. All right, coming up, friendship is fun and all, but you might be looking to take things to the next level. We're going to go back to our conversation about dating on college campuses, and we're going to hear from 2 students who are at UVM trying to navigate that world right now. This is Vermont Edition. Stay with us. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. If you're just joining us, this hour we are talking about all the different ways that young people in our region are building relationships, both platonic and romantic ones. And as we heard earlier in the hour, dating apps and AI have really changed the game in a lot of ways on college campuses. It's a world that our next guests know very well. Scout Kennan and Helena DeCastro are rising juniors at the University of Vermont. They host the podcast Ask the Cats for the Vermont Cynic, which is UVM's student newspaper. Scout and Helena, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Hi. It's nice to be here with you.
Um,
Yes,
l- uh,
thank you.
Scout, let's start with you. What was your first impression of not just dating culture, but like meeting people culture in Vermont when you first arrived on campus a few years ago?
When I got here, so we're both going into our junior year. So when I got here 2 years ago, I definitely felt the vibe of it's very casual, like casual to the nth degree, but kind of in a way that I hear a lot of my peers saying that they're not really making those connections, and in my mind, it's because of how casual it is. Because if you just think that friends are gonna come to you, then you're not really making that effort to go out and find those other people as well.
Right, right. Helena, did you have a similar feeling moving here to Vermont?
Um, I'm pretty social, so I love going out to meet people. I feel like definitely when you're searching to like meet people and make friends, then you do find who you're looking for.
Hmm.
But
But that searching can maybe be a little scarier for some,
yeah,
especially I can
definitely.
imagine. Well, first, what how old were you to during the height of the pandemic, like when you potentially had to stay home from school? Scout, what year was that for you all?
Oh gosh, I think that was the end of our freshman year of high school, I think is when it all kind of hit the peak, is when they shut everything down, was the very tail end of our freshman year.
Okay. So do you feel like that experience of having to be home for a chunk of high school affected what it was like to enter college and start trying to meet people and potentially date for the first time?
It definitely made the experience a lot less connected because I think a lot of people, especially when you're in those formative years of high school, kind of learning social skills is really important. And if you're not in person with people, that kind of border between a person to person connection is built up throughout that time. And so I think a lot of people just they weren't able to exercise their social skills in those very formative years. And I think it also brought a lot of people onto social media and other virtual ways of meeting other people. And that kind of fostered this culture of, oh, well, it's easier to meet someone online than it is to make the effort to make that in person connection.
Mm. Helena, did you feel the same way? Do you feel like that pandemic year affected how you felt when you were entering college and meeting people in person?
I definitely agree with Scout that I feel like it was the start of people like kind of using technology to filter life, sort of. And so I definitely would pinpoint the pandemic as to when like our generation started focusing more on social media for sure.
Yeah. Um, you've both told us that the dating at UVM has its own specific vibe and is kind of hard to define. If you had to try to describe UVM's dating culture in a couple of words, what would they be, Helena?
Oh, that's that's difficult. Definitely. Oh, I'm not sure. Probably I do feel like everyone is so um I really like the UVM student culture because I feel like we are very accepting of individuality and we really try and encourage it. So I do feel like if I were to find a word, I feel like open. I feel like everyone's very open to meeting each other. So
Nice.
that's definitely a positive.
Scout, do you have one, or does it feel as positive to you?
I think it's definitely positive. To me, the culture of romantic relationships is very not serious. We talked about this a little bit on the podcast itself, but the dating culture seems to be very people are not looking for very often long-term serious relationships, more so than I feel on other college campuses or even in just other environments. UVM feels very particular in people are fine with just having something casual rather than dating for long term.
Right. And you've both described dating apps on the podcast as like feeling more like a game rather than a tool for real connection sometimes. And I wonder if you think that gamification has also like contributed to changing what students expect out of dating. Like, are people using these um, to have that more like short term fun, maybe one off experience versus trying to like meet somebody that they could date as a serious boyfriend or girlfriend or partner, Scout?
Dating apps themselves, to me, just kind of are built that way because
Right.
really the only type of dating app you'll see is you see a picture of a person, you get one or two short, like little fun facts about them, and then you get to say yes or no, and that's it. You're either never going to see that person again or you can start talking to them. And I think that it in itself creates that idea that, oh, this isn't really that serious because it takes away almost the personhood of that because you're just looking at a couple of facts about a person. And so I think that commodifies this idea of seeing all these different people and just making that really quick snap judgment of yes, do I want to talk to this person or no, I don't want anything to do with them.
Mm. Well, I want to share an email that we got from a listener who has been thinking back on one of her early dating experiences. And if you have one of these stories to share, there's still time to call in at 800-639-2211. This one's from Mary in Stowe, who writes, a couple weeks into my freshman year in September 1966, my big sister fixed me up on a blind date with a guy from Harvard. She was so excited, Mary was so excited that she started getting ready at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a 7 p.m. date. She had her hair in rollers and decided to take a bath and borrowed her roommate's bubble bath. She kept pouring more and more in because it wasn't bubbling like she expected it to. After 30 minutes in the bath, she realized she was covered in oil, not bubble bath. No problem, she thought. A little baby powder will fix this. A lot of baby powder later, she was covered with a thick white paste. So she ended up using a nail brush and multiple washcloths to scrape the goo off of her body. Her hair had gotten disheveled and she didn't know what to do, but her date still showed up, bought her a nice corsage, which sounds so nice, Mary, and never asked why she was bright red. She also never offered an explanation, and then they never saw each other again. I love this story for so many reasons. Mary, thank you so much for sharing it. But Helena, I wanted to ask you about this one in particular because you told our producer that for you, dating apps are kind of always just there when you turned 18. They weren't there for people like Mary. And I wonder if you ever feel like you wish that you or your generation could have gotten to experience what dating felt like before apps.
Yeah, this is so funny that you're asking me this question because I talked to my grandmother a lot, and I've been telling her how much I wish I could go to college back, like, when she went to college, because I do really, I am kind of against social media apps and dating apps. I feel like they did they did they're making it a lot easier, but I think it is robbing us of the courage that we need to go talk to people, so we can kind of hide behind them. Um, and it's definitely, something I wish I could have experienced not having them at all. I
Yeah.
think that would have been a really impressionable experience.
Scout, what do you think?
I think kind of that sparked in my mind this thought that I have about dating apps is that they're built to work for kind of a very specific type of person. But unfortunately, obviously, they're available to everyone. I think in order to find what you are looking for on a dating app, you have to be as comfortable talking to people on an app as you are talking to people in real life. And unfortunately, I think people think it's easier to talk to someone on an app, but in some ways it's a lot harder because there is more effort that you have to put into like keeping it afloat and making sure you're responding and stuff like that. And so I think you have to be a very specific type of person. And even if you're not that type of person in a very specific type of headspace, And I think that's why a lot of people don't agree that dating apps, quote unquote, work, just because they didn't necessarily get out of it what they were looking for.
Hmm. I wonder if you two ever feel or your friends feel unsafe using dating apps and like meeting up with somebody that you don't know in person. Like how do you and your friends keep that feeling of safety, Helena?
Um, I don't have too much experience on dating apps. The one time I did have it, I was very careful in making sure that the person also went to UVM, so that was kind of or like lived in Burlington, was
Right.
around. But I don't know if I have enough experience to say anything on the subject.
Scout, what about you?
I I have more experience. I'm not ashamed of that with dating apps, but I something that's also unique to UVM and how I'm sure Elena can attest to this, but at least one of your friends will have seen someone on campus at some point. And I think that when you're on dating apps, you're, at least for girls I know, will share their experiences very openly. And I think that UVM in particular makes it feel very safe because I think a lot of the time, at least one of your friends will know them or be a friend of a friend. And so I've never really felt unsafe on a dating app at UVM, but also I'm very confident in that I have a good sense of judgment. And I think that's also part of putting yourself in the right headspace to go on a dating app is you do have to think about your safety because at the end of the day, they are all strangers to a degree. And so just keeping that in mind and not being so flippant with dating apps, I think is very important.
Yeah. And Scout, do you think that using a dating app is something that's like advisable for first year students? Like looking back on your own experience now that you're a rising junior, is it something that you'd recommend to a first year going into college, or would you say maybe hold off?
I think I was on dating apps my first year of college. And from that experience, I can very confidently say, do not download them your freshman year of college. I think, like we were talking about earlier, that idea of making sure your social skills are more developed, especially coming out of high school, where a lot of students now who are in college now experienced virtual school and virtual relationships a lot in their formative years. I think making sure that you have those skills developed before jumping to a level where the face to face interaction is completely gone is really, really important. And so I would strongly recommend to not download them at all your freshman year of college.
All right, there's the advice. Let's see what people actually do. If you have a story about using a dating app in college or after and want to share it with us, I would really love to do more stories about this part of our lives because it's a big one. So email Vermont Edition at vermontpublic.org and help us shape our future reporting on the social lives of people in our region. Scout Kennan and Elena DeCastro host the podcast Ask the Cats from the Vermont Cynic, which is UVM's student newspaper. Scout and Elena, thank you so much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
so much for
having
having
us.
us.
All right, well, that is all the time that we have for today's conversation. I do want to give you a quick heads up about what we have planned for Monday. We will be joined by the climate expert Bill McKibben of Ripton. He has a new book out in which he makes the case for solar power as the cheapest energy source on the planet. If you have questions for Bill McKibben about solar or you work in that space and maybe you've read his book, email us at vermontedition@vermontpublic.org and be sure to tune in for that conversation, which is Monday at noon. Today's show was directed by Aaliyah Papes. John Aarons is our managing producer. Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro are our producers. Our intern is Callie Canuxerl, who produced today's segment. Today is Callie's last day with us, and we're so thankful for the time that we had with her. Our call screener was Rick Barrett, and our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch up again soon.
These days, there's so much news, it can be hard to keep up with what it all means for you, your family, and your community. The Consider This podcast from NPR features our award-winning journalism. 6 days a week, we bring you a deep dive on a news story and provide the context and analysis that helps you make sense of the news. We get behind the headlines. We get to the truth. Listen to the Consider This podcast from NPR.